Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. This week we're going to be talking about staining and maintaining wood decks.
That's exciting. It rhymes.
We'd like to thank Deep ZZZ0700, who gave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. And we'd also like to thank Adam from the Attaboy Clarence podcast. He talked about our podcast in an interview he did. So people have been staining wood for centuries and using pigments made from plants and materials. Some of the first stains, they took pieces of iron and they soaked it in vinegar to get a stain. And also they would take tobacco and soak it in ammonia.
Really?
Pretty wild, huh? The first mass-produced stains came out in the 1920s, and Pratt & Lambert were one of the first companies to produce stains for homeowners. Mm-hmm. Stains are basically a blend of pigments and binders and a carrier. So the pigment is your color. You've got some type of adhesive that's going to, hold it, which is your binder, and then the solvent is the liquid that's going to evaporate and leave that in place.
So like paint?
Yeah, well, some of the stains, like the solid color stains, are like a paint. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're basically gluing this color to the top of your deck. And so some pigments, are very large particles, opaque, and they're binding to the surface. And then some of the dyes they're microscopic crystals and translucent, and they're actually absorbed into the cells of the wood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Start with cleaning.
Okie dokie.
So a great routine is to clean your deck at least once a year, and one of the best tools is a power washer. So you can rent one, but the prices have really come down, especially on the electric models.
Yeah, they used to be super expensive.
Yeah, and what's nice about these power washers are they use a lot less water than a hose. It removes more dirt, grease, grime. You can actually remove peeling paint with a power washer, so they really do a nice job. And then we had talked about when we were talking about cleaning driveways, where you should have a power washer 2,200 to 3,000 psi.
Right.
For decks, you're looking for right around 1,500 psi, and you want to use a nozzle or a tip that's 40 to 60 degrees, so it's a wide spray.
Well, what if you're using the 2,200 on the deck?
Then you're gonna be able to carve your name into the wood. So it's amazing. A power washer. It'll cut ridges in the wood, and you need to keep it about 12 inches from the surface. And have just a nice, steady sweeping motion, and keep moving, keep working. Otherwise, it's amazing how much damage you can do.
Really?
Just with water. It's pretty funny. So I would always start with a mild detergent and then work my way up to something more aggressive, like we talked about with the concrete. Behr, Crud Cutter, and Simple Green all make highly rated deck cleaners. Mm-hmm. So Behr is BEHR, Crud Cutter, KRUD. KUTTER. And then Thompson's Water Seal actually has a nice line of cleaners for different types of finishes. So they have one cleaner for hardwood decks, another one for semi-transparent stains and solid and semi-solid stains, and then they also have Oxy Foaming Cleaner.
Wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah, they've really added a lot to their line. And so the Oxy bleach, so this isn't like a standard bleach. This is a less toxic, biodegradable. So oxygen bleach is sodium percarbonate, which is just basically washing soda and hydrogen peroxide.
Haven't we talked about this a lot recently?
Yeah. Well, more and more, these companies are really embracing the oxygen bleach because it's just mild on the environment. And it's actually a very good...
It's super.
It does a good job. And so you can make your own oxygen bleach. I've got the formula.
Oh.
Take 1 quart of hydrogen peroxide, 1 cup of washing soda, 3 quarts of hot water, and 1/4 cup of liquid dish soap, and you can make a really nice cleaner yourself.
Wow, we should do a video.
Yeah, there you go. If you don't want to make your own oxygen bleach, you can pick up Stain Solver. And this is put out by Tim Carter. He's the guy who has the YouTube channel Ask the Builder. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
See, acid builder I've heard of. The guy's name I had never had.
And then for mold and mildew, I was reading a big article that Clorox puts out, and they recommend you can take 2 cups of bleach to 1 gallon of water. You can spray your deck with a hose first, get it wet, use a deck brush, and then scrub the solution in. Let it set for about 10 minutes, and then rinse thoroughly. They also recommend whenever you're using anything with bleach that you hose down all the vegetation around the deck first.
Right.
And then put this formula down, scrub it real well, and they don't really want it to dry. They want you to keep it wet and then hose it off before it dries. If you have a wood deck that's gotten gray or has tannin streaks, you can use a restorer, and it usually contains oxalic acid.
Okay,
And
so for people that don't know what a tannin is,
So those are those brown or tan discolorations, usually around the knots in wood. Almost some of them can even be sappy as it comes out. So what's wild is the tannins that are found in plants, they bind with animal skin to form leather. So Egyptians figured out that they could take these vegetables, pull out the tannins to make leather about 400 BC.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? So the tannins, it displaces the water in the cells, and then it cements all the fibers together so you can skin an animal, use these plant tannins, and you're making leather.
Nice.
Now, once you've cleaned your deck and you've allowed it to dry, you can do the splash test.
Everybody's favorite test.
To see whether it needs to be stained or sealed. So you can sprinkle some water on the deck to see if it soaks in and darkens. If it darkens the wood within 5 to 10 minutes, you need to seal it or stain it. And then if it beads up or if it just doesn't soak in, you can wait till the next season. If your deck is peeling or rough and you feel like it needs to be sanded, you really need to consider the age. You do not want to sand any pressure-treated wood that was produced before 2004.
So isn't that all decks are made out of that?
Yeah, most of them are, yeah. Yeah, so anything before 2004, it's CCA lumber. So this is chromated copper arsenate, and it is highly toxic. It's actually no longer allowed in residential projects because of the arsenic in it.
There's arsenic in the wood?
Amazing. Does a great job of protecting it and killing insects.
Well, yeah, it's going to kill everything, right?
Yeah, but the EPA says that CCA lumber, you should not sand it, burn it, pressure wash it, never use it as mulch. You never want to use this as boards in a garden where you'd have edible food. And you do not want to use a stain that produces a film. So we talked about like a solid color stain that almost goes on like a paint.
So what do you want to use this lumber for?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. And you don't want to mess with it. So if you have a deck and you know that it was pre-2004, you only want to use water or oil-based toners on it, semi-transparent or clear oil-based sealers that are absorbed into the wood. Okay. And then you want to seal this once a year, period. Because we want to keep this protected because we don't want this arsenic, these toxins, to leach out of it.
Okay, so what if you move into a new house, they have an existing deck there? How do you know?
If you can't tell what it is and you think that it's pressure-treated lumber, some of them are marked, but many people sand off the markings, which is scary, that's what we used to do. But you would want to just then, in that case, you'd want to always use a semi-transparent or a clear oil-based sealer and just seal it once a year because you don't really want to mess with it. And you actually don't want to use, this is one area where you don't want to use a pressure washer on these old decks because you can blow these particles into the air and you're breathing them in. The EPA suggests that you use a deck brush, use light pressure to clean it, and you can also get an arsenic test kit, so you can go to the hardware store and have them order one for you, and you can test it just to be sure. So it's wild. So pressure-treated wood before 2004 is scary. Mm-hmm. And then we've talked about before, any of the paint made before 1978 can have lead in it, so you don't ever want to sand any of this pre-1978 paint if you don't know whether it has lead in it. So what's wild is in ancient Rome, lead poisoning was a problem with the wealthy. So they used lead in their makeup, in pots, in vases. They used it as a wine preservative because lead actually tastes slightly sweet. So, and then lead in their plumbing, of course, and just amazing the plumbing they had in ancient Rome. And now there's some historians that think that lead poisoning in the upper class helped lead to the decline of the Roman Empire.
Because why not?
It's weird, huh? So Pliny the Elder, we talked about the ancient Roman writer. He wrote about so he was writing about the dangers of lead in 77 A.D., just from his research. Mm-hmm. And then in 1884, Germany prohibited women and children from working with lead. In 1904, Sherwin-Williams actually reported on the dangers of lead, and it wasn't until 1978 that lead was banned in paint in the U.S.
Wow. Well, the lead lesson is done with now, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, so can we get back on topic?
So once your deck is cleaned, you're going to apply your sealer or your stain. And for most of these products, once you clean your deck, you need it to dry for about 3 to 5 days. You're looking for about a 15% moisture level.
And how would you figure that out?
So you can pick up a moisture meter. Well, most people are just going to let it dry for, if you let it dry for 5 days, in most cases you're going to be fine. But you can pick up a moisture meter. So they have 2 different styles. One has 2 prongs in it that you jab into the wood, and it's going to give you a reading. And then
I'm guessing that's your favorite?
Yeah, it's fun. and then the other one has a sensor plate that you put on the wood.
What are the main types of stain?
So there's 5 main groups. You have solid color, which forms a film on top of the wood. So this is just like paint, and over time can actually peel, especially if it's not applied properly. It's really designed to be walked on. It's heavy duty. It lasts usually 5 to 7 years. Many of these need 2 thin coats. So you really need to read the label before you apply it. Mm-hmm. And again, with this, it has to be 15% moisture or less. If there's too much moisture in the wood, depending on the product, it will not stick to the wood.
Interesting.
And then you have semi-solid. This actually penetrates into the wood. It's not going to peel like a solid color because it's not riding on the surface. This has a very strong color. So if you really, want a unique color, you're usually going to put 1 thin coat of this on, and this is going to give you real good UV protection. You have semi-transparent stains, and these penetrate. They won't peel. They've got UV protection. Again, 1 thin coat for most of these products. Once you start getting into the semi-transparents, now the grain of the wood is really going to show through. Mm-hmm. So if you really like the look of the wood itself, you're not covering that up. These usually last 2 to 3 years.
How about the semi-solid? You didn't say how long that lasts?
Usually 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
For semi-solid. And then you have toners and oils, like Australian timber oil is really popular. Mm-hmm. And these can either be clear or tinted. These really penetrate deep. They're very thin. They get in. They won't peel. You need to check for the UV protection. Some of these have it. Some of them don't. Mm-hmm. This, again, very thin coat, and you'd want to put something like this down once a year. This would be good for like that CCA, pressure-treated lumber,
right,
to protect it. And for these, most of these, you need 15% moisture or less. And then you have clear sealers and waterproofers. So some of these are wild because some of these can actually be applied to damp surfaces or high moisture percentage. So you can check the label. But Cabot has one, and we sold a ton of Cabot here in the Chicago area. It's very popular. But they have a clear wood protector, and this can go on damp wood. As long as there's no standing water, you can put this right on damp wood. So you can clean it, you can brush it all off, and you can protect it in one day, which is pretty cool. And this penetrates, it has UV protection, and this will last 1 to 2 years. This, because it's so clear, it usually doesn't protect against the graying of wood,
right,
but it's going to protect it from water damage.
Let's talk about how to apply the stain.
So most of them can be put on with a pump sprayer, roller, or a brush. You can look at the label. The pads on a pole are becoming very popular. And then they have power sprayers now that are really starting to do a nice job. In fact, at one of the last shows we went to, Graco, Graco, did a demo with their True Coat sprayer. Mm-hmm. So they have it corded or cordless, and you put your stain in this, and it just goes on fast. It does a very thorough job. Like some of the early power sprayers just did not put it out very uniform. Mm-hmm. And so this really does a nice job. Their demo really looked excellent. If you use a sprayer or a roller, you can then use a brush to brush it into any hard-to-reach areas, or you can work it in between the boards. You can also use a brush all around the house. But if you're using a sprayer and you back brush it, you'd only want to do a couple boards at a time, spray it, and then use a brush to work it in any parts. And when you work it in with a brush, you really allow that stain to penetrate into it. You would want to start with your handrails, your horizontal and your vertical rails, your balusters first. You'd want to stain the end of the wood and then do the main deck. And then, again, I would just work a couple boards at a time. Keep a wet edge. You want to apply a very thin coat, and then keep stirring the stain as you're working, because you want, all those solids, they will drop if you don't keep it stirred.
Well, I think the biggest problem is that people try to apply the stain like they do paint.
Right. Yeah, put it on too thick, and that's not how it's designed to work, and it won't cure properly, and you have the potential for it to peel.
Right.
Where we're looking for a very thin coat. You don't want to apply it in direct sunlight for most of the products, so early morning, you don't want any rain in the forecast for 24 to 48 hours. And then again, another tip, you spray all of your vegetation, hose it down, and then put like cloth drop cloths over it when you're staining so you don't damage your vegetation.
Is there any suggestions for which stain to pick? Like if you want a solid color, transparent?
Well, what's interesting is the more solid the color, the more protection you get, and then the more natural color that you have in your wood, this is going to affect the final color of the stain, so you want to kind of think about that. What's interesting is most professionals recommend using a semi-transparent in the beginning, or depending on your deck, if you have something with a beautiful color, you might want to go clear it first. But most pros recommend moving to a solid color stain for more protection as your wood gets older. So, as it gets weathered, if it's 10 to 15 years old, they're saying stop with the semi-transparent to clear and go to a solid color, because sunlight and just wear and tear over the years are damaging the fibers. And then if you move to a solid color stain later in its life, it'll actually give you more life to the wood.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. If you have an oil-based stain and you're using rags, one thing that I was reading a couple of these articles with the pros, they said to be careful of spontaneous combustion, especially any of the stains, we talked about this before, any of the stains that have linseed oil in it. If you have these rags all bundled together, they can, because as the solvent evaporates, it generates heat and it can combust. Just wild, huh? So they're saying if you're using linseed oil or linseed oil-based stains, to put your rags in a container with a tight-fitting lid and fill it with water and seal it off before you,
And have the fire extinguisher close by.
Yes. You always, whenever you stain, you want to have a fire extinguisher. And then you stay with the type of stain you used previously.
So keep a can?
Then you know what type you've used. It goes on much better, because some of these stains, they don't interact well. So it's nice to stay in that same family of stains.
Plus, when you're standing in the aisle for outdoor stain, all the cans kind of look the same.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I'll remember. Okay. Yeah. Which was it? Semi-transparent,
Right. Semi-solid. Kind of yeah. So there's a few main types of decks. 75% of decks are made from pressure-treated lumber, usually pine. Very easy to work with, less expensive than other wood.
It's easy to stain too, right?
Yeah, all stains, all sealers work really well on pine. You have redwood and cedar. They're naturally resistant to decay and insects. Oil-based products are usually recommended by most manufacturers of redwood and cedar, because some of the old latex-based products had a hard time penetrating because of the natural oils in it. But there's new advances in nanoparticles.
No way.
Cindy, that are allowing water-based particles to get deeper into the wood. And then many people like these clear water sealers because it shows off the natural color of redwood and cedar.
Well, if you're spending the money for
this
type of wood.
Absolutely. And then as these get older, you can then start using a semi-transparent stain to maintain that color. And then if you have a hardwood like Ipe, so it's spelled IPE, but this is like a South American wood, so they pronounce it Ipe. And then mahogany, they're very difficult to work with because they don't absorb stains. So you need to find a product that's designed for hardwood. And one of the top-rated ones I saw was Mesmer's UV Plus Finish for Hardwood. And that's MESSMERS. And then for composite, so the composite decks are becoming more popular because they take plastic and wood fiber, they blend it, and they're creating these composite pieces of decking. And you need a specific product for these composites. So two of the highest rated that I saw, one was Mesmer's Composite Deck Finish, and then Penofin, Penofin. Theirs was called Knotwood Oil Finish for composite decking.
What are some top-rated companies for stain, since you talked about a lot of other things today?
So top-rated stain, you've got Cabot, C-A-B-O-T, Sherwin-Williams, Sikkens, S-I-K-K-E-N-S, Behr, B-E-H-R, Thompson's, Olympic, Woolman, which is W-O-L-M-A-N, and Penofin, P-E-N-O-F-I-N.
Do you have anything else to add?
I'd say a great routine is pressure wash your deck once a year. You want to seal it or stain it when it fails the splash test. And then look at your label, because every product's going to be a little different when they recommend you reapplying. If you don't know what type of wood you have or what type of stain was previously used, most of the pros agreed on kind of the goof-proof product is an oil-based semi-transparent stain.
Let's wrap this up.
You can check out our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave us a review.
And 5 stars.
Yes.
And thank you to everybody that gave us a review and 5 stars rating.
You can,
and not all of them were family.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, or Jabbercast.
And if you enjoy it, please leave us a review there too.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
If you'd like to email us, you can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.